in.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you, and it's great to be here today. An interesting story. I actually have the job that I do today due to the Sales Enablement Society. I was returning from maternity leave and I reached out to the Sales Enablement Society through the blog online and said, anyone looking for somebody? I'm available at the moment. And my boss at the time from Wisconsin reached out and said, yeah, let's have a chat. And here I am today. So yeah, thanks to the Sales Enablement Society, I landed this job. So I had the brilliant idea when I took on this gig about a month ago that I was going to research a brand new topic. And I decided the science of learning and how adults actually learn and connect with new material really fascinated me, because the company I joined, within the arm of security, we have over 300 security products. So getting that to resonate and stick with salespeople is quite challenging. Secondly, getting an edge when you're amongst so many competitors and what you can do to really get cut through with Salesforce that have low attention span and can switch off easily fascinated me. And finally, I just thought it would be a fantastic idea to deep dive and find out for myself what techniques and tools I could use in my presentation to help connect with the audience. So that was 4 weeks ago. I then procrastinated for 2 weeks, and I'm that snooze person, in the picture. I snoozed about 3 or 4 times this morning, and then I started researching into it and found this is actually really complex. Understanding how the brain works and what the science behind it. So, Google wasn't enough. I decided to get some help. So I looked and found a neuroscientist in the UK who's studying her PhD at the moment. I found her through Fiverr, which is funnily enough. I decided she wasn't $5, it was a little bit more than that, but she did a comprehensive study for me into how the brain works. And we've written 2 papers together that I'll share after this. Because she explains it so much better than I do. And if I could, I'd video stream her in right now to do that. But I'll be referring to my notes throughout the session. So I hope this helps in some way. I'm also competing with the jackhammer outside. So, yeah. So before I get started, I want to paint a picture of the landscape within Micro Focus and what we're dealing with. So we help companies that are affected by potential breaches of data, identities, applications, and their overall security. So, we're trying to help companies stay out of the news, but often we get contacted when they are in the news, unfortunately. And here are some of the headlines that have happened in the last 3 to 6 months, but even more recently, within Australia, Clearview AI, facial recognition firm, suffered a breach exposing their entire customer list. Indian Airlines, 1 million passenger identity information records were exposed, and more recently than that, Toll Group had an attack where 1,000 of their systems were affected. So getting to the root cause of that and providing fresh insights and remaining current, but also educating Salesforce, where we've got, unfortunately at the moment, a 30% churn rate per year, provides quite the challenge. And we're also dealing with fear, uncertainty, and doubt that customers have. And, a lot of you are in software, but those of you are not, it isn't a hoodie wearing, faceless person that we're dealing with. But the entity that they are trying to protect themselves against is often an unknown. And that's really hard to sell to as well when you've got, this potential unknown threat that could happen. So I will be getting to the brain stuff shortly. So a methodology, I came up with this because no, that's not the right slide. Okay, sorry about that. Methodology, we're a multinational firm and information technology business. We're $4 billion in revenue. And here's a snapshot of our competitors in the market. So hence why I wanted to get to what will give our salespeople an edge when they're going out and selling. And the challenges that we're faced with at the moment within Micro Focus is we acquired HP business about 2 years ago, HPE. And in that, we gained 5,000 staff. So we're now 12,000 staff globally, but we basically doubled in size overnight. So bringing on additional systems, people, culture, processes, and a rep way of selling was extremely challenging and something that we're still coming to terms with as a business. The migration to one is something that we're still working on, one sales methodology, one sales culture, one way of selling, and developing it and immersing that within our sales culture. And also, as I mentioned before, the retention of reps. So this is a real quick snapshot of sales enablement within our business and what we want to achieve. So essentially the overarching message at our core is that we want to support Micro Focus 2020 strategy to deliver our numbers in a predictable, consistent manner as one team delivering consistent value to our customer. And we deliver enablement through new hire, war rooms, and the sales enablement portal. We facilitate a lot of face-to-face sessions. Our onboarding sessions are 4.5 days face-to-face, where we travel around different geographies and deliver the whole experience of what the business is and what our product suite is and how to sell from the Micro Focus perspective. And some of the tools and techniques that we have available are all put onto what we call Sales Enablement Central. So we've got a Sales Enablement Handbook, and this we're trying to make consistent across 50 countries. So this was a one-stop shop for sales reps to come and develop materials in parallel and also post them up here. In addition to this, we also have bids and proposals and brand assets. We put our sales plays up here and our major marketing campaigns as well. So getting to the interesting stuff. This interested me because essentially our brains are wired to learn, and the brain absorbs and retains information, and really getting to the crux of the way adults learn and how best to utilise both the most recent and latest high-tech methods, but also ensuring that adults don't miss the point when they're learning. So the bottom line that I wanted to get to in this research was how to get the best learning outcomes for the sales reps and understand as facilitators and trainers how the brain learns and adapts to training methods and resources to get the most positive outcomes out of your sessions. So another sort of side note, but here are some of the curiosity and the capacity for learning has seen us transcend the physical limits of evolution in society. And here are some of the inventions that have come out in the last 12 months. The first one with the walking cane is actually GPS wired, linked into Google Maps walking stick for the blind to help them connect. That's just come out recently. The two shoe examples, one you press a button and it automatically ties the laces together down the bottom. And the second at the top is a beatbox installed into the shoe so that you can play music and maybe play basketball at the same time. The robot picture is, her name's Moxie, and she's been brought into hospitals to help with process automation and take out the drudgery of the boring jobs that take up a lot of time of nurses to free them up for more patient one-to-one time. The helmet was a Scandinavian invention that's basically foldable. They found out the reason people aren't wearing helmets was because they were bulky, so they folded it. And the hovering light bulb, I don't really know, but just thought it was really cool. and the ultrasound being portrayed straight to the mobile phone rather than you taking away, a half-metre sheet with you and wasting resources. So despite our innate ability to learn, when it comes down to it, we're not always the greatest teachers, especially when it comes to imparting knowledge and skills in a classroom setting. And the brain's not a static organ, which develops to maturity and then halts. So our teaching has to reflect this, and the brain is an ever-changing mechanism throughout our entire life. So the course and the structure and the function is impacted by every experience. So the changes may be short-lived, they may be longer, but the concept of neuroplasticity, which I'll go into shortly in the best way I can, learning it in 2 weeks, I think what I want to reflect is that we have to understand the conditions that help us operate best under these environments, and then bring in teaching methods that reflect this. So this guy is Donald Hebb, and he coined the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together. And essentially, neuroplasticity is the backbone of learning. When you talk, sleep, observe, think, listen, billions of brain cells called neurons within the brain, if you study this, you'll probably know a bit more than I do, fire chemical and electrical signals, and they communicate with each other. So with novel experiences or repetitions of activity, cells strengthen, and existing connections and group neurons will establish intricate networks which allow them to communicate easily. So it operates on a use it or lose it basis, and the brain wants an efficient shift. So these neuroplasticity networks help to strengthen it by basically through repetition, and the more the repetition, the stronger the neural connections become. And the old adage, practice makes perfect, it actually works from this perspective, and I'll go into the part of the brain shortly that this resonates with the most. Strong repetition, teaching students, and attention is vital to evade that dreaded switch off of students. So how do we focus attention and build repetition in our classrooms? The how I'll get into now. So the optimal way is to build in a multi-sensory environment into your teaching platform. So when we're delivering information, we ought to be thinking about how we can be activating more than just one sense. So the death by PowerPoint and speaking where you're just one to many in this particular situation, it really isn't the best platform to really help it resonate. And there's other interesting parallels that adults engage with information in quite a different way than children, as you'd expect, but we seek a more interactive experience where we don't respond well to the passive impartment of information. Instead, we engage or respond to a stimulus in order to learn from it. So lectures and reading are simple, but practical exercises and discussion is actually what resonates the most and helps yield better retention rates of both the attendees, but also the information that they're absorbing. So I just encourage you to think for a moment of a presenter that you saw that really resonated with you, and what particular aspects they had that made that stick, and why is that in your mind? Was it the way they presented? Was it the visuals? Was it the video? Was it that they were just extremely charismatic? Did they mean something in a particular field for you? This particular part comes out in the next section I'm going to cover, but neuroscientists have proposed that it's likely that the human brains evolved to develop and learn and operate optimally in multisensory environments. So ultimately, the interactive experience, discussion, practical exercises, and employing a variety of senses simultaneously, as well as visuals, is your optimum learning environment. So testing product knowledge throughout the particular session that you're running, opening it up for discussion, even though that may lead to tangents or complaints or people veering off track. It actually brings in, another aspect of the brain that brings in better retention of information. One of the interesting things on this that we do in our onboarding is we've got a 3-part role play that we do. And I know when you hear role plays, everyone's like, salespeople hate doing it. But we do a discovery meeting initially, and that's a 15-minute session. Once we've covered 2 days of material where they're meeting with a C-suite person to uncover and really use the questions that they've learned over the days to get to the bottom root cause of what their problem may be. And we hold off. We don't give them information unless they ask for it. And if they're asking inappropriate questions, we'll probably just shut off, and they've got a strict 15 minutes to get to the point and find out what that next meeting within the organisation can be. We then have a discovery meeting number 2, and that's a deeper dive with maybe an application security professional, an IT architect, to better understand what's going on within the organisation. And again, we don't offer information. It's about them questioning and asking. And we've got supplementary material that we provide the facilitators so that they have the correct answers and, the right scenario to sort of lead them along. And then the final part of the presentation and role play that they do as a small team of 2 to 3 is the pitch. And this is where they're pitching their idea and presentation. They'll put together a presentation deck, and we'll also have a reward that we give out to the winning team. And it's amazing the level of enthusiasm, excitement, competitiveness that comes into the room through doing this particular scenario. So the next thing I wanted to show was Hermann Ebbinghaus, a German psychologist, developed the forgetting curve. So I don't have to be too stressed. 50 to 80% of what I show you today, you're going to have forgotten in the next few days. But it's this repetition method of repeating information that helps the information resonate. And you'll see on the curve here, the red one is the forgetting curve. And over a few days, you're almost down to 0. But by repeating that at regular intervals, the level of retention improves. And this particular stat here is from the medical profession. So they interviewed a bunch of Harvard medical students, and after a year, they'd forgotten 33% of what it is they'd learnt during their course, and 2 years, forgotten 50%. So that's quite reassuring that the medical profession is that way. But with spaced repetition, 40% greater efficiency at remembering. And what's interesting about this is it's about teaching smarter, not longer, and tools need to only allow repetition, tools don't only need to allow repetition, but also remain current. So it's not just about repeating information, but repeating and updating and keeping them informed of additional insights that will help them along the way. So the next part that I wanted to cover was pleasure patterns and dopamine. And again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm having to refer to my notes a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't usually do this, but 2 of the major concepts which drive learning in the mature brain are patterns and pleasure. The brain's evolved to seek patterns and pleasure in our environment. In other words, if you have a critical piece of information that you want remembered, your audience's encounter with that information needs to fit familiar patterns which they've already seen in the world. So pleasure is about reward, enjoyability, and engagement. And dopamine comes into it in that it's that exciting rush that you get when we experience something new or exciting. We win a game, we have something delicious to eat. And this reward makes you keep coming back for more. Chemical messengers also come into play. Neuroscientists have recently found that they've been able to link dopamine to to more than just rewards, a teaching signal in class, like good job, can actually help, but so can bad job, because there needs to be a balance of criticism. So you're not going to say, bad job, that was really not the right way to pitch, but brief moments of criticism are actually healthy in a teaching environment, and I found that quite interesting because I'm, in the past I've been quite, that's really good, that's really great, okay, let's next person. But it's actually massaging both in so that it's an even level, makes them come back for more, if that makes sense. So dopamine conveys a message about the available reward for a level of effort that they need to invest, which is important in both learning and motivational functions. So I wanted to open it to the floor just briefly, if this is going to work, and just ask people what's been a really rewarding training session that you've benefited from and why. So I just one person, if they can answer, and yeah. Mm-hmm. And that gave me a sense of where I was up to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, getting more into the brain regions, the act of learning is multifaceted, and there's three particular areas of the brain that come into play the most when learning. The hippocampus is basically a crucial structure in memory consolidation, and this is really important for new memories and also learning brand new material from a product launch perspective or sales perspective. So one thing to consider when planning your lessons is to activate as many parts of the hippocampal memory as possible. You can do this by telling a story, and many of the presenters over the last few days, over the last day and a half, have done this, and it basically activates the episodal memory and implements. They say that a really good way to do this is to implement a strong plot and allow all of the small but still important points to become characters in your story. And I thought that was a little interesting tip to add in. So the next most recently evolved and still, It's basically, with the impact of technology, this is the place to watch at the moment. The neocortex is the one that affects attention, decision-making, and helps allow us to learn. So it's extremely important, and it brings about cognitive flexibility. So it allows you to jump from one topic to another without too much pain, but it also is highly engaged with other different parts of the brain. So it's extremely critical, and it's the wrinkly part of the brain, that you see in pictures. But the neocortex, as vital as it is for engagement, attention, decision-making, and allowing us to learn, it's a little bit fragile. So it's precious in that it's attacked by stress, and stress can cripple it when it comes into play. So hence why we say, when we're stressed or tired, it's hard to make a decision, or it's really hard to pay attention because I'm really stressed at the moment with this particular project. So stress, as you all know, releases a hormone called cortisol, And this means there's a blockade of learning. One way to prevent this is exercise. Not as easy to do in a classroom sort of scenario, but getting people to write in a notebook, changing seats, saying hello to neighbours, rather than just sitting still, are all effective ways to prevent people from zoning out and help reduce that sort of stress thing. I wanted to ask Graham, in your coaching experience, how do you help from a one-to-one level people reduce stress that you may come across and that they're really stressed in that coaching sort of scenario?
Great question. I'm so glad I did that. I usually take them back to the part of talk success.
Okay.
When have you faced something like this before? Talk me through how you went through that, and now how is this one so different from that? So that's the way I live.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just thought I was really interested to know because, coaching is something that you really specialise in, and seeing that one-to-one stress would be quite apparent to you when you meet with someone. So, yeah. Okay. All right. The next part I wanted to touch on briefly was whiteboarding. And this also is helpful for that neocortex aspect of the brain. It helps with both selling because it appeals to that decision-making aspect of the person you're presenting to. And it also shows a strong mental representation of the concept by visual cues, and the brain is able to integrate this memory and attach more information to the concept and as the lesson or as the whiteboard progresses. So you can use it to drive interactivity, be selective also when you're capturing customer input. They may say something and you can sort of recraft that to, you may mean this. And also, it's important, and we emphasise for our reps to use physicality and gesturing when they're whiteboarding. It's not just, back to the audience and like this. It's really about an engaging experience in the room and not just being PowerPoint deep and drowning them in PowerPoint. So the third part that I'm going to look at is the amygdala, which I have to say it quick because I'm not too fluent on it. But this is the part of the brain where your clearest memories are painted with the brightest colours, and they're attached to the strongest emotions. So for me, my first date with my husband, I can remember it vividly in my mind like it was yesterday, not because it was the most amazing, sparkling romantic experience, but I'd broken my toe and was 45 minutes late to the first date. I was hobbling along, and I remember I was thinking, this guy's so going to call it off. Like, I'd call it off, but I'm so late. And I called ahead and said, he was at a tapas bar, and said, can you order me a Vespa Martini? Little did I know he bond and was like, yeah, I'm going to wait around and see who she is. But the amygdala is historically it's been associated with fear memory. However, more recently, it suggests that it contributes to the contribution that it has to learning and behaviour is quite complex and much more complex than we expect it to be. So strong positive emotions during a session can challenge a person's perception, and also integrating things like personas. We do IT personas and application security personas, and using aids to tap into an emotional stimuli during the session and encourage that particular activation of the brain. Finally, the flow state. So those of you that have done yoga before may have heard of the flow state, but it's about immersing and performing an activity with a positive and an energetic focus. So it's about creating positivity, productivity, creativity, and overall learning. It's known to activate when people are daydreaming or in wakeful rest. So if, I have seen someone close their eyes here. That's okay. You can daydream or you can listen to the jackhammer outside, but this activity can also be triggered by focusing on an external task. So getting them to do a task together, or getting them to, we do a breach scenario where a company, your particular client's just been breached. Okay, what do we do? What would you do? So we break them out into some activities and get them to do that. Another thing that we've done is build Lego. That was one of our CSR Bring Your Children to Work sort of activities, and so many pieces of Lego went missing or ended up under tables. So I don't know if we're going to do the Lego again, but the Lego in a workshop environment creates surprising levels of competitiveness and creativity. Just let me know how I'm going for time. So the next part that I wanted to look at was high tech versus low tech. Another sort of tech term that this brings in is called sensory gating, where we filter out or gate redundant or non-important information. Firstly, it's important for our survival and ability to thrive, but secondly, it's important for our communication in our environment. So making the information seem critically important, or saying, if there's just 3 things that I want you to take away from today's session, that's what these are. This is really important to sort of build into your presentation. And the other question, I guess, that this builds in is high tech really the answer for better learning? So bringing in videos and in some cases, complete online onboarding systems and virtual training. The problem that this has is that there's a parallel between the constant pop-ups and notifications that you receive via your phone and the excessive screen time that you don't want to then replicate in a classroom or learning environment, because the hippocampus is then not engaged as well as it should be, hence resulting in poorer long-term memory of the material. So high-tech methods of teaching are designed to drive attention towards the educator's goal, but digitally implemented only can have that same switch off or distracting effect where people sort of zone out. So a lot of research is still going into this, and I'm really interested in seeing where it goes. But essentially, if we lose relevance, we lose attention, and this leads to a reduction in attention and the chance that the students will completely miss the point of the material. So technology, more or less, is there to enhance a instructor's lesson, not to replace it. And building in things like collaborative group software, bulletin boards, discussion tools, or virtual meeting tools where you're actually not just getting the presentation deck but actually seeing each other in the presentation is really important in this, but there's a caveat that it should also be moderated. So again, this is the perfect scenario if we had all the resources and budget in the world. But another interesting pioneer in adult learning is Malcolm Knowles. As you can see, he likes the repetition factor in his 6 points, but essentially adult learning should be relevant, so it should be linked to motivation. It should be goal-oriented, which is personal and professional objectives of the person. It should be practical, so it should help solve a problem. Self-directed, assume responsibility for their choices. So people should be responsible, but also I think it's really important to monitor and track learning to ensure that it's still happening, and that it also draws upon and utilises people's experiences and life knowledge and life experiences. So the final slide, I've summarised that in 4 points. The space and reiteration of content is extremely important. Operating optimally in a multi-sensory environment is what people appeal to the most. The flow state activation, looking at hyper-focusing and risk-reward stimuli, and then trying to cultivate a low-stress environment and incorporate exercise and or interaction will help the brain evolve and learn and retain new concepts. Learning, my final remark was that learning recruits a wide variety of brain areas that act in symphony to produce good results. And I've put together a paper with this neuroscientist that I'll publish via LinkedIn. I'll publish the short version because no one wants to read 12-page paper. But if you are interested, please drop me a line via LinkedIn or email, and I'd be more than happy to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Anne? And yes, as Anne had mentioned, feel free to reach out to her if you wanted more information. Oh, yep, you've got a question? Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely looked into this. So if it's information that you're easy, that's easy to forget, it's okay to space that out further. But if it's information that's critical, job critical, it should be shorter intervals. So there's an interval play, and people tend to spread the intervals on information that they prefer. So if you're more interested in a certain area, you'll have shorter intervals. But what you should be doing is having longer intervals for that, because there's an interest and a dopamine effect that makes you engaged and wanting to learn about that. And it's the harder, more complex stuff that might be more, challenging to learn, that should have shorter intervals. But happy to send you information on that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.